turn to Rebbe.
Okay, everyone, please turn off your mute your computers. So, Freilich and Lag Bomer, happy Lag Bomer to everyone. It's a special day. Special powers are in the world. The koiches of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and all of those who act in his way, the tzaddikim, are very, very present today. I made a clip for crownheights.info. That's, in general, my clips are seen on that website if you go to crownheights.info. So I made a clip for Lag Bomer, a short clip, in which I reminisced about my days in the 1960s, late 1960s and early 70s on Lag Bomer. It was a very, very, the memories are very warm, like Rabbi Twersky, Dr. Avram Twersky told me when he did, hypnosis on people. He brought, cancer patients who were very sick and a lot of pain, through hypnosis, he was able to bring them back to their childhood where they remembered playing ball on the green grass and then the nice air. Well, I have that same aura and feeling about Lag Bomer. We went to yeshiva. This is when Lag Bomer was during the week. Chabad, Lubavitch didn't make a parade in those days, only if it came out on Sunday. So they brought public school children and other yeshiva children to Crown Heights at 770, and the Rebbe came out and spoke, and it was a beautiful event, as you know. But during the week, there was no parade in those days. So we had yeshiva. We actually went to yeshiva, dressed up, like Yom Tiv. It's a special day. And we davened, and we learned a little bit. And then they took us on buses, I think, to parks. We went to different parks in the area. And I still have this memory of my 5th grade Rebbe, Rabbi Barnetsky, who was playing baseball with us and took the bat and was swinging. Just very warm memories. So Lag Bomer, both spiritually, is the day of Reb Shimon and his energy, and it's also and that comes together with a very warm feeling and a very good feeling. So it's in that context that I share some ideas today. And some of it will be a little bit in the Torah world, and that is, why do we call it Lag Bomer? Really, in Hebrew grammar, it should be Lag La'omer, the 33rd to the Omer, right? That's what we're doing. Not Lag Bomer, the 33rd in the Omer. And the Rebbe, someone asked the Rebbe this question, and the Rebbe answered in a letter to this person that it's brought in Polish Hasidic Sfarim, that Lag Bomer with the bays equals 345. Where do we find a Gematria of 345 in the Torah, but with someone's name? It's Moshe. Mem Shin Hey is 345. So if it would have said Lag La'omer, it wouldn't equal 345. And since we want it to equal 345 because of Moshe, that's why they say they made it Lag Bomer. But that itself is problematic. Like I've told you in the past, Gematria is not pulling out, straw from a hat. Is there an inherent connection between Moshe Rabbeinu and Lag Bomer? And so the Rebbe explained in that same letter that the Arizal writes, I think, that Moshe Rabbeinu, that Rashbi was a Gilgul of Moshe Rabbeinu. He had a neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. But Mela, there is a connection between Moshe Rabbeinu and Rashbi. That's from the Rebbe's letter, and that's why it makes sense to say that it's Lag Bomer, not Lag Bomer, Lag Le'omer, because of the 345. So it's not just a Gematria game, but rather it's an inherent game that they were one of the same person in the sense they had the same neshama or elements of neshama, etc. That's one thought. Another thing that I came across is a question about the Rashbi being in the Meira 12 and 13 years. The Gemara says in Shabbos, in the Sugya of Rashbi, the Gemara says that he was together with Rebbe Lazar, his son, 12 years they hid where? In the in the cave. Gemara says he came out of the cave So he saw people that were plowing and sowing the field. So Rashbi said, Manichin chaye olam al chaye sho. They're forsaking, they're going away from eternal life for temporary life. And the Gemara says a very harsh thing that he said afterwards about, like kind of they should burn up. A very, very harsh term. But the Rashbi was very, very adamant. He was very disappointed. When he came out of the Maida, here he spent 12 months hiding and learning Raza Torah, the secrets of Torah and everything else. And he comes out and he expects that everyone is doing the same thing. And what does he see? People are interested in their fields. Right? So the Gemara says, so that's why he used a very sharp term and idea that they should cease to be. That was when he came out of the Maida after 12 years. Then the Gemara continues. It says, so he decided it's not time for him to come out. What is he coming out for if people are not learning and serving Hashem and all that? They're worried about their parnasa and their business and everything else. Someone mute. There's an echo. Hillel, is someone not on? Someone has their mute not on?
Mute, guys, mute your...
Okay, thank you. So the Gemara says that he went back into the Maida. He said, if this is the case, I don't need it. And he went back. He's in the Maida. And then he decides a year later, you know what? Let me try to... maybe things changed. The Gemara says he came back out and Kol Heicha de Rebbe Lozer Machi Reb Shimon Masi. Wherever Rebbe Lozer kind of made illness, in other words, there was problems, Reb Shimon right away, Masi, he cured the situation. And then at the end of the Blat Gemara, the page of the Gemara says that Reb Shimon, wherever he saw a problem, because, there were Kohanim there were people buried, and there were no markers where they were buried. So Kohanim, when they would walk over, they would become tummy. So this wasn't good. So the Gemara says that Reb Shimon, Kol Heicha Tzarech Tikkun, wherever he was a tzaddik, and he sensed that there was a body buried on this piece of earth, under this piece of earth, but mainly he was Masaki, and he made markers, and that Kohanim should not go there. That's at the end of the page in the Gemara in Shabbos. So the question is, what happened that the 13th year, all of a sudden, Reb Shimon doesn't return any longer to the Maida, right? He doesn't return to the cave, and he's comfortable. What took place over here? In other words, what's the difference between the 12 years and the 13th year? So I saw for the Rebbe a nice explanation. The Rebbe says that 12 represents the like we've been learning, Seder Ishtalshalos, the progression, the average, the normal, the 12, for example, the 12 months of the year. So everything is mesudar, everything is organized. 13, what's 13? 13 reminds us of the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, the 13 attributes of mercy. Here we're talking about L'mayla Meseder Ishtalshalos. The number 13 is representative of L'mayla Mishtalshalos, transcendence. So, when Shimon came out after 12 years, when things were still organized and everything had its compartment and box, he basically said he at that time was at a place of 12, of Ishtalshalos. He had not yet experienced L'mayla Mishtalshalos. So from the perspective of Ishtalshalos, the perspective of organization and normalcy and all that, why aren't you learning? Why are you just doing, avodah, plowing your field? So he took a very stern act. In other words, from the Ishtalshalos perspective, there is, punishment, and there's chesed and gevura. When he came out the 13th year, he went through a transcendence. In other words, it's not about It's not about the world. It began in Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon went through a transcendence, and he, in that 13th year, accomplished L'mayla mishtalshelus, and therefore it was all rachamim. So his attitude changed. And I think it's a phenomenal insight for Lag Bomer and all of the year, that is the cup half full or half empty? The same idea. Do you look at the world with a right eye positive, or do you look at the world with a left eye negative? Do you look at the corona plague as only negative, or do you look at it to try to find the positive in it, etc., etc.? And that's why the Gemara says that there was a difference in his attitude between 12 and 13. This also explains an overall question that is asked. Is there a connection between the Talmidim, the students of Rebbe Akiva? The Gemara says, Posku Lomos, they stopped dying on Lag Bomer. Right? Until then, Leinogo covered Zebazeh. They did not respect each other. So since they didn't respect each other, therefore they died. Came along Lag Bomer and it stopped. So the question is, what happened Lag Bomer? So someone is saying what happened is they started to respect each other. Thank you. But what took place, Lag Bomer, that made them make that change? So the Rebbe has his idea on this. It's in many of the sikhs, but I want to connect it to what we said earlier, and that is that on Lag Bomer, you know that Rashbi was one of the 5 Talmidim, 5 students, prominent students of Rabbi Akiva. But before we answer the question, there's another question, which you all have, the question, how could you say Linogo covered Zebazeh? How can you say these great rabbis and tzaddikim didn't respect each other? And, so the explanation that the Rebbe gives in his talks is that they all had Mesiras Nefesh for their Rebbe Akiva. Each one said, I am Rabbi Akiva's man. I'm holding his flag. What's his flag? Love, Ava. The other one said, Gvura. And the third one said, Rachamim. And because they were real students, they said, not only am I going to carry the flag of whatever approach I believe is my Rebbe's approach, I'm going to try to convince the other person. Because real Mesiras Nefesh means it's you, like we've been learning in the Maimarim. It's you, it becomes you. If it becomes you, you share it with, like you can't control yourself. It's you. So you go to someone else and you say, your approach of Gevura is not where it's at, because our Rebbe is about Ava. And the other student says, sorry, my friend, I'm a student of Rebbe Akiva too, and I see Gevura. And this is how they butted heads and how they got into fights and how they didn't like each other. So it's because of their Mesiras Nefesh. But at the end of the day, this was no good. And they died because of it. Why? Because if you really have Mesiras Nefesh for your Rebbe, you understand, just as with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he has room for different approaches. Rabbi Akiva, our Rebbe, also has room for different approaches. And don't tell me that Rabbi Akiva is only Chesed or only Gevurah and only Rachamim. And that was their mistake. So basically, what is it that Lag Bomer reminds us? What is it about the students of Rabbi Akiva, that the mistake they made and the realization that they came to at a certain point? Is that there's a synthesis of all the approaches, and that and you should tolerate all approaches, and not just tolerate it, but all approaches are as long as within Torah, they're all acceptable. So now comes Rashbi, who is what? A student and a primary student of Rabbi Akiva. He realized that. He realized that staying in a Maida, being in a cave for 12 years and coming out and burning up the world because there is a divisiveness, is a breakdown. In other words, when when Reb Shimon came out of the cave the first time after 12 years, he was like the students of Rabbi Akiva pre-Lag Bomer, where he couldn't put the two together. And this is Rashbi. Rashbi, I mean, it's a phenomenal insight. That even a person like the Rashbi, nevertheless, was in a certain box, a very holy box. Teirosim Nosi. Could you imagine Teirosim Nosi? His work is his job. But all of a sudden he says, my Teira, everyone has to be Teirosim Nosi. The Gemara says they tried and they failed. And they told him, sorry, Harbe tried it doesn't work. You're an exception. That's why he went back the 13th year. He reached transcendence, and he realized, in practical words, what did he realize? He realized that that's not the mahalach, that's not the approach. Extremism to exclude anything else is wrong and dangerous and unhealthy, etc. So he brought them together, and that's why, specifically on Lag Bomer, when there's the Kedusha, and I know that you might be thinking, well, Rashbi came after the stopping of the dying of the students. First of all, we have to look, I don't know historically if that's the case. It might be the case the years, but even if it is, the day Lag Bomer, like the Rebbe says about Yutas Kislev, when it's called a Yom Psura, a good day of good news, it's not that it became good news 500 years ago. The day Yutas Kislev from creation was a day of good news. And when was it revealed? The revelation of it was 500 years ago. But the essence of the day is what's it called? Has been there for creation. And the same idea, the same nekuda is with Lag Bomer. Because the energy of Lag Bomer is the simcha of Rashbi, the Yom Hilula. And what does the Rashbi represent? Bringing together the two kavim. And that's how he came out in the 13th year. Why he came out Dafka in the 13th year. So this was realized by the Talmidei, Rabbi Akiva, on Lag Bomer, and that's why they specifically, post-Kulamus, they didn't stop dying on Lag Bomer. This is based on the sichos of the Rebbe, the way I believe he understands this whole issue. Any questions on what I said till now? Yes, Yoni.
So one question is, so from what you're saying about this, the conflict that was happening in the times of the Rashbi, it's similar to the conflicts that we're going through today, with all different kinds of, respecting each other, Litvish and Hasidish and this and that. So I'm saying, there's also, it seems like, here in Eretz Yisrael, when people come for Lag Bomer and they go to Meron, it seems like it's a Hasidic holiday. Like, it's more, like, Litvish people are not so into it as much as Hasidim. So I just wanted to know, is there a reason for that? Or, it's two questions, I know, but one's a statement and one's a question. So that's it.
Okay. So turn off, mute your things. Basically, the Litvish world, by and large, celebrates and understands Rashbi to be, Torah Seyom Nosei. So the way to celebrate Torah is to learn more Torah, to be besimcha from Torah. So that's why there is overall, as a generality, no dogish, no emphasis on, the bonfires with the jumping and singing. But I want to tell you, and I was telling this to my wife, you should know in Chabad, in years ago, not today, when I was growing up, I don't remember any bonfires. Only Lag Bomer day, when we went to the park, maybe there was a bonfire, but at night, nothing. And the Rebbe, on the middle of the week, he would go to the Oyhel, and he would come back and make a Farbrengen and say a Maimer Chasidus, and it was very, it was an animated, spirited time, but it wasn't anything more than that, okay? So, and in fact, I heard that when the Lubavitcher Hasidim of Tel Aviv and Kfar Chabad, going back to the 50s, would go. They would rent a bus and they would go up to Miran. It was a very Hasidic, serious atmosphere. There was no jumping and no shechting lambs. That wasn't part of the, But Hasidim, Polish, Hungarian Hasidim, were always more animated because, as you know, the overall notion of what we call Hasidic Chagas, the Hasidim of Chesed, Gvurat, Feres, which means Polish Hasidus and Hungarian Hasidus, the other Hasidic groups, they're all more into the emotions. So the emotions calls for dancing and singing. So that's just on a philosophical idea which played itself out in the real world as you identified earlier. But I must tell you that today, you just put on the screen and watch these Zooms and different things. Everyone, maybe hardcore Litvish are not there, but everyone else is. And I was thinking actually about this yesterday, Yoni, that this corona, like we spoke about earlier, what positive thing do we have from it? So everyone has their answer. But one of the thoughts I had was it's brought together a lot of people. It's brought together a lot of opposites. And really, to have Satber and Flatbush. Yesterday there was a Hatzolathon. I don't know if you saw it or you're going to see it today. It was actually run out of Crown Heights. And, they raised several $1 million. And, it was, two Lubavitchers and a Flatbush guy. And everyone was together, and the singers and the performers. And it felt very, very achdusdik. It really did. It really did. And I think that, you talk about even the Litvish. Take, for example, in Panovich, at the end, Ne'ilas HaChag over there, Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres, they sing the Balatanyas Nigin, and they sang Tzom L'chol Nafshi. The Hakaf Shnias, because you have it on. The Rebbe's Niggin, Tzom L'chol Nafshi. In 1980, if you sang Tzom L'chol Nafshi in Panovich, they beat you up or threw you out. That's reality. Okay, I'm telling you reality. So, and here, the whole day of Rosh Hashiva are singing the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Niggin. Everyone knows that Tzom L'chol Nafshi is not the Alter Rebbe's Niggin and not the Friedeker Rebbe's Niggin. But who's niggin? Hi, boss. Yeah, whoever has mute your mic, please. So what do we see? There is achdus, and I write about this, and it's really interesting to see, because as a student of history, so many things have changed. Again, I don't know Pnimius. Pnimius, what's going on in the heart, is another discussion. I think, I spoke to this group of Ner Yisrael students a few weeks ago. They asked me to talk to them about Chabad and the yeshiva world. So one of them asked the following, and I thought it was an interesting observation. It's an obvious observation, but that he voiced it and we discussed it. He says, do you think it's right for people who speak negative against Chabad to benefit from them when they travel by eating in their Chabad houses and restaurants, and if they need a bed? He says, isn't that hypocrisy? That was the question. So outwardly it is hypocrisy. It is hypocrisy. You go and stab someone in the back and then you smile at them. That's like such a terrible, terrible midah. Terrible. But the flip side is, what's the flip side? The flip side is that issues that are inside, Pnimius, that's between them and the Eibishter, between them and Hashem. And this was the Rebbe's attitude. It's Lag Bomer, and it's a day of Hine Matoiv Manoim Shevas Achim Gam Yochad, how good it is to sit together and be all one. It really the Rebbe was this way. You can't imagine how many people behind the back of Lubavitch and the Rebbe spoke negative. I'm talking about years ago. And outwardly they smiled, and they even came to the Rebbe to be Menachem Avolim. I mean, I know names and I know facts, and I'm not going to tell you, okay? But I could document what I'm saying. I'm not just throwing it out there. I can tell you which rabbi and which rav and what he said and when he said it, okay? But that's not relevant. That's not relevant. What's relevant is that he's here now, he's saying Shalom Aleichem, and he's acting like a mensch, and he's being friendly, Avas Yisrael. The fact that behind the back he has other feelings, that's between him and Hashem. And the Rebbe, we know, because it was like a question by us. This and this person who has told his students to act in this way and not to go to Camp Gan Yisro or not to go to a Farbrengen. And we know that he said it because we were told by students who heard it. And you greet him and you smile at him and you accept him. And that was our Rebbe. A person of Avas Yisrael. That's real Avas Yisrael. And that's what the Rashbi accomplished on the 13th year. That's what I mean with transcendence. Transcendence means that even your enemy, your foe, the person who is bad-mouthing you respond with Avas Yisrael. And that's what the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Lamed Beis in Tanya, Lilmid mi Yosef v'Echov, to learn from Yosef and his brothers. That's what it means. Here the brothers were so terrible to him, and what does Yosef do? He has Rachmanis. So that's the, yes, Shmuel.
I just want to remind you, I don't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago, the Kailot went as a group to Meron. It was a couple of days after Lag Bomer. It was within 3 days. And Hillel brought his guitar, and I thought to myself, why is he doing it with the guitar? It's such a special, serious place over there. He started playing the guitar, and people were dancing. I don't know if you remember that. Over there, it was like a little area.
I remember it very well. I remember Shmuel very, very well. And it was so beautiful. It was beautiful.
Yeah, all different kinds of people there, just all different types.
Yes. So there's, there is a very different, and also one other thing, since you mentioned, the Litvisha and Lag Bomer, Yoni. So at the same group, a few of the boys, a few of these students from Ner Yisrael asked me about, what do I think about Neo-Hasidism? So I thought he's referring to, Zalman Schechter's Neo-Hasidisms of the 70s and 80s. He was referring to Rabbi Moshe Weinberger, who had this debate with this Litvisha Rav, whether, why you students, modern Orthodox, getting involved with H. Kodesh or Moshe Weinberger and other groups, and being kind of yeshivish, Litvish, modern, but yet benefiting from Hasidus. And these guys were asking me seriously about it, and I could see on them they were exactly the types that would say, we're not ready to become a full Chassid, but we love the Hasidic warmth, and we want to even learn some Hasidus, and someone learning some Tanya, some Breslov Hasidus. So the point being that there really is a change, and I want to make another important point, even about the hardcore Litvaks. Let me tell you something. You can't imagine how many of them have learned the Rebbe Sichas. I don't mean all the Sichas. They've the Talmid Chachamim. They've seriously looked into the Sichas and Tanya. And guess what? Some of them say over things from Tanya and the Sichas to their Talmidim without mentioning a name. Rabbi Gifter, Mordechai Gifter from Cleveland, told his students, and we know it several times, that he used to get, the Lubavitch sent the Likutei Sichos when it came out as pamphlets every week to Rabbanim and Rosh Hashiva in the United States, all over, maybe worldwide too. And he got them in Cleveland, and he would learn them. And he said it's Gewaldige Teira. Rabbi Gifter from Telz, who later, was known not as a friend of Lubavitch. Nevertheless, he learned seriously, Sichos of the Rebbe. Does that mean that he became a chassid? No. Okay, does that not mean that he sided with Rav Shacha in the 80s and 90s? Yes, but that's not the point. The point is, and it's not just Lubavitch. Today with Rabbi Biderman, how popular the Torah of Rabbi Biderman is. Trust me, a lot of hardcore Litvaks are doing that. So we have to emphasize, Yoni, on Lag Bomer, the Achdus Yisrael, that we're one people, and not allow the differences to impact us. I recall the Rebbe once said, this was about the Israeli parliament and the politics, and I remember the Rebbe saying, he said, when you come to the table, he's talking about to those that had a Torah view, don't discuss issues that you have major differences about, because you'll have arguments, you won't get anywhere. Talk about the things you have in common. The things you have in common, you could make a lot of achdus, and this is happening today. Today, Moshe Shilat and his Bnei Yeshiva group has 800, probably now more, learning Chassidus and taking tests and getting prizes and getting money, and you know what happens, Yutas Kislev. I mean, I'm telling you, it's reaching Panovich, it's reaching Slobodka, it's reaching Mir. Now, is it out there? Is it obvious? Probably not, unless you come to the Ne'ilas HaChag in Panovich, like I told you before, at the end, Hakov Shniyas. But overall, there's an inyan of Achdus. I want to, for a few minutes, we still have some time, talk about the Lag Bomer. Before we spoke about the Rebbe, when Lag Bomer was during the week, what he did, he went to the oil and he came and made a Farbrengen, and it was pretty quiet otherwise in Crown Heights. But when there was the Lag Bomer parade, it was on Sundays. I believe the first parade was in 1943. In the 40s, there were several parades. Who ran those parades? The Frierdiker Rebbe, wasn't well enough to run those parades. It was the Rebbe. He appointed our Rebbe, who, spoke English, better English than others. And he had him kind of be in charge. And then he worked with Rabbi J.J. Yaakov Yehuda Hecht, and Rabbi Hecht and Rabbi Goldstein, Yossi Goldstein, the father of the Goldstein of San Diego that was shot. They were like the leaders of the parade. And at the parade in those days, you could see so many children from public schools that attended. And that really was the gist of the parade, was to show Yiddish kinder, Jewish children who didn't go yet to Jewish day schools or yeshivas, the beauty of Yiddishkeit. And I believe I heard from someone in Yerushalayim, actually, a few years ago when I was there, that he and his brother became frum, not because of the parade, but because of release time. Release time was Wednesday afternoons, where the city allowed Jewish children to be taken out of class for an hour. That's why it was called released time. They were released, and to study Yiddishkeit. And who taught them? The Lubavitcher Bochrim. Although you should know that in the 40s and 50s, when this started, Chaim Berlin, Torah V'das, Yeshiva University, Yaakov Yosef, all the yeshivas, those yeshivas, not all the yeshivas, but those yeshivas had representatives. Rabbi Hecht was very smart. He didn't want it to be, with the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe, it shouldn't be a Lubavitch thing. In those days, they wanted it to be klali, everyone together. How do you do that? You get representatives from each yeshiva. So we have the names and we have pictures, and I put it into one of my books of the representative for YU, for Rabbi Yitzchak Chana and Chaim Berlin, and they had meetings. And they brought children, and they were involved. So one of them told me that Rabbi Moshe Feller, sein gesund, the Shliach of Minnesota, Minneapolis, Moshe Feller, took him and his brother out in release time, and they learned in Torah Vadas in Williamsburg, and going back to the 50s, 57, 58, 56, and they learned together, and that's how they became frum. That's what he told me. And
Rabbi, my father learned there in Torah Vadas in Williamsburg.
Right. So the idea of the Lag Bomer parade was to bring all these children that throughout the year. And you know how many children in the 40s attended release time? 10,000. Rabbi Hecht has the lists. It's not a Baba Maisa. 10,000, because most Jewish children attended public schools, 40s and 50s. So the release time program was a very powerful one. Once a year, they had the Chalamot Sukkis gathering where they came and the Rebbe spoke to them. And then when Lag Bomer came out on Sunday, they made a parade. And that's why if you see any old pictures, you'll see the children, look at them and the signs, and you could pick up, and also it says from this yeshiva and that yeshiva. Again, it wasn't only, and then in the 60s and 70s, there were more from yeshivas and all that, so they also became part of the Lag Bomer experience. So once at one of the 1940s Lag Bomer parades, the Frierdiker Rebbe said like this. He said, we know that Friday night, Lubavitch, Chabad, our Nusach is, we don't say V'Shamru. And almost everyone else says V'Shamru. And this is, like in the Frum world, in the Torah world, is like, you don't say V'Shamru. It's like outrageous. It's such a powerful, important tefillah. And here you go, you Lubavitchers. Well, first of all, they don't know, but I believe, I have to check. I think it's Minhag Agra. If anyone knows, tell me. I think the Minhag Agra is also not to say V'Shamru Friday night. Lubavitch is not the only ones.
Yeah. Rabbi Litvak, Chaim Berlin did not do
V'Shamru. Okay.
Yeah.
So, so it's, it's a few, but by and large, most Yidden do say V'Shamru. So they asked Alter Rebbe, why did you put it into the Siddur? Right? It's in the Siddur. It's in the Lubavitcher Siddur, the Alter Rebbe's Nusach, but we don't say it. So there's a reason for it. I think it has to do with Rebbe Barditchever. No, Shmuel? Do you remember the story?
Yes, he said to the Alter Rebbe, don't you know, when you're even down here to say V'Shamru, there's a big procession up in Shemayim.
Okay. Right. Right. So I think the Alter Rebbe, because of that, the Alter Rebbe put it into the Siddur. But what? Shmuel, what? Right, because Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchev, he was his mechutin. But
the reason you left it out, you should mention the reason. He considers it a
A
hefsek.
hefsek, right? Okay, yeah, right. Of course, yeah. Shmuel's right. The reason the Alter Rebbe says you shouldn't say it. It's considered an interruption between the end of the bracha of Ashkivenu and Shmon Esrei. So the Alter Rebbe, but others disagree. It's just the psak of the Alter Rebbe. So he puts it in, but we don't say it. And then the Alter Rebbe said, but they said, Reb Levi Yitzchak, your mechutin, the great tzaddik, he said it, and what he didn't think. So the Alter Rebbe said, Nishtaf jeder Yerid kemen tanzen. One cannot dance at each and every marketplace. A Yerid is like a marketplace. Sometimes you can make it to a marketplace, and sometimes you can't, even though it's a great marketplace. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, listen to this, about the parade in the 1940s that the Rebbe led. He said, he saw how the Rebbe was so beautifully leading the parade and how special it was. He said, the Alter Rebbe said, Nicht auf jeder Yerid kemen tanzen. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, Auf der Yerid ken men tanzen. But for this marketplace, i.e. the Lag Bomer parade, we can all dance. That's how touched he was by the beautiful parade. At the parade, later on, they started to make floats. And I myself was a few times on these floats because you needed people on the floats. And the floats would go by the service lane right in front of 770. What they did is they built a beam, a platform, coming down from the steps of 770 with red carpet. And Rabbi Hecht would introduce the Rebbe before the Rebbe came out. Then they would sing Ani Mamin. I think they would sing Ani Mamin, a very touching, soothing, Niggin Ani Mamin, Be'emunah Shalem, the old Ani Mamin, Ani Mamin, that Ani Mamin. And then the Rebbe all of a sudden started to come and he, totally, unassuming, and he just walked straight to his place. He spoke to Rabbi Hecht a few words, and the program started. So after they said the 12 psukim, the Rebbe initiated the saying of the 12 psukim for children and others, not just children, adults also, but primarily children. After that, and you could see, by the way, when the children said the psukim, you could see the Rebbe's lips moving. He would say the psukim with them. And after that, the floats started to go by. And it brought a lot of smiles to the Rebbe. Why? I mean, some floats were, this mitzvah, this idea. But I remember I was on one float. I forget what the theme of the float was. But one of the people on the float, Yeshav Refuah Shalema, is not gesund, he's in the hospital today. He was, quite heavy. But he was a character, and a likable character in 770. Everyone knew about him. And he was the baker. I forget, maybe it was matzah. I think maybe it was rolling the matzah. And I remember he was rolling the matzah, and the Rebbe smiled so much to him, and to everyone. But it brought out, it was very real, very human. What we saw was like the human part of the Rebbe, which, many times you didn't see it. You saw holiness and you saw Torah and everything else. But it was such the sun is shining. It's spring. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. Everyone is chilled. Everyone is relaxed. Everyone's having a good time, and the Rebbe himself is laughing and clapping and waving. Then when children went by on the float, who had their upsharing, right? Like Bomer would do upsharing. The Rebbe would go like this with his hands, like this. In other words, he participated with the children. And then another thing that I just realized the other day. Once Rabbi Hecht, and after all the floats and the marching bands, and which was also beautiful, and they had the fire department come with their fire trucks. It was a whole production. It was a 2-hour production or so. So at the end, Rabbi Hecht would, again, speak about the Lubavitch and the Rebbe, and he had a certain way. If you heard Rabbi Hecht, he had a way of flattery, but it was done with, I believe, taste and smart, in a smart way. So anyway. So he's thanking everyone. He's thanking this person, that person, this organization for all. It was a massive production. Weeks before, they were a few months setting all of this up. So he's thanking everyone, which is proper. After he finishes, the Rebbe, the mic is in front of him, and he says, and a special thank you to the children, the boys and their girls. And Rabbi Hecht didn't thank the boys and the girls. And to me, the way I heard it is the Rebbe was saying, Rabbi Hecht, who was a good friend, the Rebbe's and the Chassid, he said, don't forget, yes, the floats are important, and the firemen are important, and the councilmen are important, but the Iker, the primary thing of Lag Bomer, the Yiddish Kinder, and they deserve the thanks. So he didn't tell Rabbi Hecht what you're saying is wrong. He just made that comment that I just shared with you, and then he left, and then he went back to to his office. He went up the carpet, and he went into the 770, and that was that. Then, after this segment of the parade finished, the buses took us to a stadium, a small stadium, which in the back of a public school on Kingston Avenue towards Kings County Hospital. And I remember this from childhood. There we had lunch, and they had clowns, and they had a show, and it was a very nice. And the Rebbe would go to the oil, like I told you. So the Rebbe went on the way to the oil. He would stop the car would come into the grounds of the stadium, and he would look around from inside the car. He didn't get out. He drove around, looked around, and he spoke to Rabbi Hecht, and then he went to the Ohel. So this is a synopsis of the special day of Lag Bomer, the way it was celebrated the last 40, 50 years in 770 in Crown Heights with the Rebbe when we had the Lag Bomer parades. And it was very, very special. Then one last thing. In 1973 or so, I think, there was supposed to be a parade, and for some reason they had invited politicians, and the Rebbe didn't want that, and they had done it already, and the Rebbe said Shabbos before. Sunday's the parade. The Rebbe Farbrengen Shabbos, and he said, I cannot come out to the parade. I cannot be part of the simcha of the Rashbi, and we were devastated. It was like Tisha B'Av for us. For some reason, I don't know what was going on there, but at that year he didn't want like politicians, and I can understand. When you want to be in a culture of openness and easy and chilled and relaxed, you don't need politicians coming and each one positioning himself to show his face, But for whatever reason, they already invited them, and the politicians were planning on coming, and it would be too late, I think, to not to invite them. So the Rebbe basically said, you could do whatever you want, but I cannot participate. So that too is a lesson. What's the lesson? That when there is godliness that's apparent, and Lag Bomer today is a day you should know for brachas, especially associated with children and marriage and shidduchim. Today is the day. There are people that can tell you that got brachas from tzaddikim, not just Lubavitcher, but from other tzaddikim throughout the generations on a day like this, especially in Chabad, because the story of the Mittler Rebbe and Hayom Yom that he gave brachas and all that. So today is a very special day to daven tefillah for, children, if one wants more children, or doesn't have children yet, or shidduchim. Today's the day. Today's the day. And kedai Reb Shimon lishbachalov. You can rely on Reb Shimon. You can rely on the Rebbe. You can rely on the tzaddikim. Today they're going to give you the bracha. So it's still, in the middle of the day. It doesn't get dark till late. Really think about this and say an extra kapitel Tilim and learn something. Give some extra tzedakah for the schus that also those people. If even we have children, we have shidduchim. Other people don't. It's a day of tefillah. The story that I just heard from a friend of mine is that in 1984, they decided, the couples that wanted children, instead of them waiting at 770, that when the Rebbe came, they would ask, they should do it at the Rebbe's house. So this friend of mine was appointed, he was a koil yungaman, to keep order so that people are not, running over and falling over each other and all that. Anyway, the Rebbe gets into his car, he comes out of his house, he gets into his car, and the entire way from his door to the car took 20 minutes because people were asking for brachas. People knew. And I'm not talking about just Lubavitchers, Hasidim and whoever knew and had respect for the Rebbe's bracha came. Anyway, Rebbe gets finally into his car. One guy, a Chassidish guy, like a Satmar, pushes himself towards the window, and I think the Rebbe rolls the window down, he sees, Oh no, he pushed himself into the door, not allowing the door to close. And my friend was afraid that it might crush him because the pressure was great, so he held the door.
The person, you know who did it? It was Alter Bucket.
Right. That's right. Alter Bucket, right. Rabbi Bucket's brother. He's a friend of mine. Good friend of mine. Anyway, so he's standing there and he's holding the door. And the Satmar Chassid says to the Rebbe, "Abrocha fa kinder, beit abrocha fa kinder." I ask a blessing to have children. He had no children. He was married for several years. So the Rebbe gives a bracha, and he's about to go away. The Rebbe says, again, I don't remember the exact words, but he says, "No, he needs someone another to play with or to talk to." Forget exactly Shmuel the Lashon, but and Alter Bucket says that he didn't get it. Like, you remember it was a lot of pressure, a lot of tumult, right? So he got the amen, he got the bracha, and he thought he'll back up, go away, and go on. And the Rebbe then said this to him: he'll need someone to play with. Yeah, a playmate, right? So, yeah. So finally, after the Rebbe repeating it 2 or 3 times, he says, so the Rebbe says, "Say amen." It's like zog amen. The Rebbe says to him, "Zog amen." Say amen. So finally he says, "Umain." The umain. And a year to 2 later, that's in 1984. Then 13 years later is 94, 97. Alter Bucket was at the oil. And he sees a Satmar. And like very few people are there. So he has the courage to go over to me. He says, "I don't expect you to be here. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? You can go to the Satmar Rebbe in Monroe's cave. What are you doing here?" So he saw that at the in the oil by the Rebbe's Tzion, he tells his 2 boys to take out the mimer, the bar mitzvah mimer, and say the bar mitzvah mimer at the oil in front of the Rebbe's caver. And they did it. So when they came out, he says, "This is very interesting. What are you, what's going on?" So he tells, he says, and he takes a look at him and he says, "Wait a minute. Were you by any chance in 1984, Lag Bomer, by the car, the Rebbe asking for a bracha?" He says, "Yes." And he says, "This is the result of my bracha." And so Bucket says, "And I was the person holding the door, shouldn't crush you." And he took a look at me and says, "Oh yeah, it's you. So he had 2 boys, twins, and they came to the oil. He said, "These are the Rebbe's kinder." That's Lag Bomer. So everyone here, you have to understand that today is a great, great day in this whole inyan. It's real. The Chaim Dalfin should help that we should have Kedai Reb Shimon Lismechalov. The Gemara says Reb Shimon is worthy to rely on him, that he's going to bring Mashiach, because after 13 years in the Myra, he came out to be Masakin, to correct the world, to heal the world. We should be so in our life, in a chassidish way, in a good way, in a healthy way, and we should see Mashiach, the Kar of Mamish. That is it.